Hello, everybody. My name is Emily Thornton. I'm the Graduate Instruction Librarian here at Brunel, and I'm here to talk to you about the literature review that's due at the end of the semester for your ED887 class. If my voice is familiar, that's because I did a video for y'all last semester in ED886 where we talked about how to search the library databases to get the resources that you need. So today we're going to be talking about the literature review. First we'll go over what is the purpose of this literature review that you need to write, and then we'll go through the 5 steps of the literature review. So we'll talk about how you plan to tackle the literature review, how you search for the articles that you need, how do you extract the evidence that you need, how to understand what you just read, and then finally how to actually write the literature review. So the purpose of the literature review is two-part. First, you help your reader discover information. So you identify what are the concepts that your reader needs to know in order to understand your project. Then you're going to help your reader understand what the experts already know. What's already been studied about this? What is already known in this field? Now, in this section where you talk about what the experts already know, remember that you're not just summarizing. You're not saying Smith said this, Jones said that, Washington said the other. Instead, you're synthesizing what the experts know into one new piece of information. Then, after you have helped your reader discover this information, you start to advocate for yourself. You show them why your project is necessary. So you've taken them through what is already known, and then you start to point out, hey, in the literature, we don't quite understand why X, Y, or Z happens. Therefore, my project is needed in order to fill this gap in the literature. A different way to look at it is sort of this funnel structure. So in the beginning, you go from really broad, you give a background information, what is already known about this topic. You go from as general as you can and funnel it down to getting more and more specific. Then towards the bottom of the funnel here, you start to critique it. So what are the gaps in the literature? We know a lot of stuff, but what don't we know right now? And that helps draw your reader down to the bottom, the important part for you, justifying yourself. So this study that you want to do, why is your study needed to fill that gap in the knowledge in the literature? So to conduct a literature review, there are actually 5 steps. It is so tempting, and I'm fully guilty of this, it is so tempting to just get into a database and just jump right into it. But you'll have a 10 to 12 page literature review to write, and you will soon find yourself very overwhelmed and lost if you don't kind of keep yourself on track with these steps. So you're going to need to make yourself a plan, then do the searching, then extract the information that you need, then understand what you just read, and then finally write. So step 1, the planning, is, I think, the most important part. Again, it is very tempting to just jump right over this, dive into what you need, but if you take a few minutes and set yourself a research plan, you're going to be a lot less stressed out by the end. So when you make yourself a research plan, it saves you time, it saves you duplicated effort, it helps you kind of filter out and understand what's actually important to your project. It gives you some direction to your research, so you're not just sitting at your computer and just kind of going in circles. And it also keeps you on track. So, you know, if you don't have 4 hours at a time to devote to this literature review project, that's okay. If you have your research plan and you only have 15 minutes to do a little bit of searching, you can just glance at the research plan, know what's the next step, and it keeps you on track. So, the elements of the research plan. I want to make a note here that this is basically the same thing as the mind map that your professor is asking you to do for a later assignment here. And I'm just going to show you guys where that is. So this is your Canvas class, and your professor is asking me to show me your mind map. So this research plan that I'm talking about, her mind map assignment is very similar. Okay, so in the research plan, you're going to first identify for yourself very specifically what exactly is the research problem. What question am I answering here? And you want to work hard on your research problem to make sure that it's very specific and very focused and is actually relevant to your field. A big problem with people's initial research problems is they're very broad, they're vague, they're identifying problems that you cannot possibly answer in the space of one semester. Then with the research plan, you're going to identify the really major points, the core ideas. What are the huge ideas that I really need to discuss so that my reader understands the issue? And these are also going to be, what the experts already know about this topic. Then underneath each one of those major points, you're going to identify some sub-concepts. So, you might have a really large point about reading curricula. What are the smaller steps that I need to explain so that my reader understands the big idea? And then finally, you need to identify for yourself, where am I going to look for the evidence for the lit review that's going to support this? This will become more clear, I hope, as I do some examples for you. So I borrowed from the mind map assignment this scenario from Dr. Simmons. So this research problem, the Dr. Simmons School District adopted a new district-wide reading curriculum without any input from teachers or community members. This has related in poor morale and opposition to the degree that some tenured teachers are refusing to implement the new reading program. All right, that sounds like a pretty big problem. So the question that you might want to answer here is, how can the Dr. Simmons School District kind of back up and relay the need for a new reading curriculum and communicate the new curriculum to teachers and other stakeholders? Okay, so that's our problem. We have mass chaos here. We didn't get any stakeholder input. We need to back up and kind of explain again why we are implementing this new curriculum. So what do we need to explain so that our reader understands the problem and how we might approach it in the future? Sometimes a good way to think about this is try to imagine you're explaining this situation to your mom. So your mom is a smart lady, but she's not an educator. She's not immersed in this world of, educational jargon. She maybe doesn't understand what a reading curriculum is. So how would you break this down to her? What would you need to explain to her in order for her to understand the actual problem here? And teachers, you do this all the time for your students without even thinking about it. You take this big issue and you almost unconsciously start to break it down into the major chunks that they need to understand. So here's an example of a mind map that's based off of this reading curriculum scenario. So in the middle here, I've got the research problem and question that I've identified. Okay, how can the school district back up and better relay the need for a new reading curriculum? And then I started to brainstorm, okay, what are the major ideas here? So of course, one major idea is, what even is a reading curriculum? Why is there all this flap about a reading curriculum? Teacher morale seems to be a big problem. Okay, so I need to talk about teacher morale. There were other stakeholders mentioned. Maybe I need to talk about them. And then the entire issue is around change management, right? They did not think through the change management process. They didn't think about any of the pitfalls. So I need to talk about change management and why it's important. So those are my really big major ideas. But I'm going to have trouble if I try to just explain all of that in one big chunk. I'm going to want to try to break those big ideas down into smaller parts. So with a reading curriculum, first I'm going to have to define what a reading curriculum is. Get everybody on the same page. What exactly are we talking about here? Then I'll want to explain, so why are district-wide reading curricula used? Like, why would the superintendent even have thought this was a good idea? What are the benefits? Why do we use this? And then to understand the problem, we're going to have to understand what's different from the old curriculum that the teachers apparently love to the new curriculum, which they apparently hate. So what are the goals of each curriculum? What are the pros and cons? What is expected of teachers in each? Maybe the old curriculum, it was very easy for teachers. There wasn't a ton of additional paperwork. Maybe in the new curriculum, there's a lot of paperwork and it's very time consuming to fill out. We just have to figure out what's expected of the teachers and explain that so our reader understands what the problem is. The teacher morale, we'll have to explain why is teacher morale so important to make an initiative successful? How can you increase teacher morale? Same thing with stakeholder buy-in, other stakeholders. why is it important for any initiative to have buy-in from the stakeholders? How can you increase the stakeholder buy-in? And then finally, the change management section here. So what are some techniques for change management? What are some best practices? A specific situation that we have here is this initiative has already been rolled out. So is there any recognized technique for doing change management, damage control, after you've already rolled out an initiative? And then finally, we'll want to look at, okay, is there any information that about change management that's specific for education? So a lot of this change management scholarship and information is going to be about the corporate business world, and we all know that the education world is pretty different from the corporate business world. So is there any change management information that's aimed directly at the public education field? So we have a pretty good start here. We've got our research problem, we've identified the major ideas, and then underneath each major idea, we've identified some sub-concepts, broken it down just a little bit. All right, I'm a very linear person, so when I do a research plan, I like to put it into bullet points and lists. A mind map is awesome. I'm just putting it into a bullet point because that's the way I think. This is the exact same information that was on that mind map screen, just in a linear format. Now, the last part of the research plan that is very easy to skip over, but I urge you not to do that, is to identify where are you going to look for the information that's going to support each one of these. Okay, so I've just done the first few bullet points here. So if I'm looking for information about the reading curricula, if I want a definition of a reading curriculum, I might go to maybe my education textbook. I could probably search in databases for it, or I might use some reliable websites. So something that's like from a national organization of teachers. We don't want to just use someone's personal blog and their opinion about what a reading curriculum is, but maybe the U.S. Department of Education, their website might have a decent definition of it, so that would be okay. Then for the next one, same thing. Why are district-wide reading curricula used? You might find information in books or your textbook, maybe education databases, maybe, again, nice, reliable websites. The old curriculum versus the new curriculum, that's going to be a little bit more tricky. We're not necessarily going to find this information just handed to you in your textbook. So each curriculum probably had some website information, some materials, brochures, where they kind of sell their theory or product. So they explain what is the goal of their curriculum. How do you implement this curriculum? What's expected of teachers in each one? Now, of course, that's going to be really biased because each curriculum is going to be saying, yes, we are the latest and greatest and we are better for the students in X, Y, and Z way. So you'll also definitely want to look in education databases and find some studies that have actually looked at the old curriculum. How effective was it? What problems did you see with it? Look for some studies that looked at the new curriculum. How is it implemented? What has been the feedback? What kind of data have we gotten out of this? So, yes, you'll probably need to include some information that was developed by each curriculum, but you'll also want to find some more objective information. So let's find some studies that actually look at how this curriculum works in the real world. All right, so that's the reading curricula part handled. We know where we're going to look for each part of that reading curriculum bullet. But now if we get down here to change management, that's a whole different thing. So if you're looking for information about change management, who studies that is the business people. So if you're looking for information about techniques and best practices for change management, you're going to want to go look in the business databases or some books about business change management. When you're looking for information about, okay, how do I step back an initiative after it's already been launched? How do I do some damage control? Again, you're going to be looking in the business databases or books. And then if I'm looking for specific tips or issues that come up for change management in education, I'll probably want to go and look at education databases and books. So I won't go through all of these, but I just want you to be thinking about how information about different ideas may be housed in different places. So just think about where the information you need might live. Also, down here at the bottom, teacher morale and stakeholder buy-in. If you look carefully at that, you think these two concepts are pretty similar. It might be worthwhile to merge these two. Are these two even like separate big ideas? Your research plan is a living document. As you do more research into the literature review, you might find more concepts that you need to add. You might find that you can drop some concepts. You might find that you can merge some concepts, like maybe teacher morale and stakeholder buy-in. Don't feel like you're tied to exactly the research plan that you first came up with. Feel free to add to it, merge it, delete it, whatever you need to do. Okay, so we've set a plan for our research. The next step is to actually search the literature. So I will not get into how to search the database. We have already gone through that very thoroughly before. I'm going to escape out of here and show you guys where to find that in Canvas. Okay, so in modules, under searching the Brunel Library, your professor has linked to the recording. If you find that you have any trouble with searching, just contact me. I'll give you my contact information at the end of this video. Okay. All right, so you have another resource to figure out how to search for the literature. I'm going to talk to you about tracking your searches and also filtering for high quality evidence. So tracking your searches, making yourself a research log. This is another thing that seems annoying at the outset. I don't have time for this, but it really will save you effort. So with a research log, all that is you're just writing down for yourself, where did I search? What search terms did I use? What were some good search terms? You can write down for yourself, useless search terms. I use this search term and it didn't do me any good. And any other ideas that pop into your head as you read through articles. And it does not have to be anything fancy at all. Here's a screenshot of one of mine. So I wrote down at the top, where did I look? A database called Education Journals by ProQuest. What search terms did I use? Phonics and vocabulary. I tried the term primary, like for primary school students. That really didn't do me any good, so I'll mark that out and make a note for myself. Try elementary. And as I was reading through the search results, I saw a lot of references to synthetic phonics. I don't know what that is. I'm making a note for myself. Hey, I need to go look this up later. So nothing fancy, just scratched on a piece of paper. Some people get real elaborate and make themselves spreadsheets. Whatever you want to do is fine. And we really hammer this research log idea because otherwise you start to go in circles with your research. You research for terms you've already used. You start finding the same sources over and over again. You forget that there were other search terms that you wanted to use. And it just wastes so much of your time and effort if you don't keep track of where you've already looked. Another part of tracking your results is just work out some kind of system for saving the articles that you find. It can be very easy to start, saving some to Google Drive and some to the desktop of your work computer and some to the desktop of your home computer. And some of them you printed out and some of them you put sticky notes on. And before you know it, you have 5 different stacks of articles and it just gets completely out of control. So highly recommend that you designate a specific folder on your desktop or your Google Drive. If you're a Zotero user, I love that and would be happy to talk to you about that. Just find some kind of way of keeping track of your articles as you're searching. When you are searching, make sure that you start at the library guide that I showed you guys in the previous video. This is the URL for it, libguides.brunel.edu/grad-ed. And that's going to start you out with a nice education-centered databases. I would not start with the search box that's in the middle of the library homepage because that's kind of intended for undergraduates. It gives you a lot of information that's not necessarily targeted to what you want. As you're searching, you're going to want to filter for high quality evidence that's scholarly and peer reviewed. The instructions for your literature review say that you need 10 to 12 pages worth of information. So you're going to need a lot of articles and only 2 of them can be unvetted. So that means that all but 2 of your articles really need to be from this high quality scholarly literature. So when we talk about scholarly literature, basically there's a pyramid of information. So down at the bottom, most information that's out there in the world we call popular. So Popular just means it's intended for any old person, a TV show, parents magazine article. It's not intended for professionals. It's not really intended for serious researchers. It's intended for people who are trying to entertain themselves or get a little bit of information about a topic that they're not an expert in. Above that is trade information. So this is information that's intended specifically for professionals in a field. So information that's intended just for teachers. So ideas for this might be, lesson plans for third grade teachers trying to teach geology. It's a little bit more focused and authoritative than popular information, but it's still not at the peak of the pyramid. And the peak of the pyramid is scholarly information. So scholarly information is written by researchers for researchers. So scholarly sources, their authority is very high. So the authors, the people who are writing the scholarly information, they probably have advanced degrees in this topic. They probably are specialized in the topic and they've been studying it for a long time. The audience for these scholarly sources is written for professors, researchers, higher ed students like y'all. The vocabulary, you can tell a scholarly source from a mile away because it is very dry and academic, a lot of big words and jargon. It's very technical. The background that's provided in scholarly sources, the reader needs to have a lot of background knowledge already just to understand the content. And then finally, you'll know a scholarly source because it will have plenty of references at the end. If a source doesn't say where they got their information from, that's going to be a problem. There's one more subcategory above scholarly that's peer-reviewed scholarly. Y'all may have talked about peer review in the past. Basically, what peer review means is one of these professors or researchers writes an article. They send it into the publisher to get published. The publisher says, well, hold on. Before I actually print this out, I'm going to send it to some experts in this field. And they're going to read this article and see if the methodology makes sense. Do the numbers add up? Are you jumping to any wild conclusions? Are you basing this on a theory that was debunked 50 years ago? And if they say, yeah, okay, this looks like a good study, it looks like good science, they give it the check mark, send it back to the publisher, and the publisher publishes it with the big old check mark that says, yes, this is a peer-reviewed article. These ED887 students can feel pretty good that this is a reliable piece of information. Hopefully by now you know how to search for the information that you need. You now find yourself with this enormous pile of articles in your specified desktop folder, wherever you've chosen to put it. Then you're going to start to read to extract the evidence that you need out of this. When you are reading these articles, you are not trying to memorize every single word. You are reading with a very specific purpose. Instead of trying to absorb every word in every article that you're reading, you are skimming to see how does this article relate to your topic? What can you pull out of this article that is specific to your topic? Which one of the points from your research plan is it related to? It could be related to multiple points. And also, does it support that point or does it qualify that point? So supporting would be, it says, yes, this point is accurate. Qualifying it might be, well, yes, this point is accurate, but only under certain circumstances. So it's pulling back a little bit. After you've extracted the information that you need, you review the evidence on one point, you draw your conclusions, you synthesize it with other knowledge that you have, and then you repeat it with the next point. I won't go too deeply into this because y'all are going to tackle this separately in the upcoming synthesis activity. Basically, there is a ton of information in every article. You are just going to skim it. You're going to pull out the information that's relevant to your topic. You're going to pull together all that information. You're going to look at one of your sub-concepts and say, okay, what do I now understand about why district-wide reading curricula are used? Synthesize all of the information and evidence that you gathered about why are district-wide reading curricula used. Synthesize it with the understanding that you already have from your background. Write a claim that says, okay, here's the gist of what I get from this, and then you move on to your next point. So when you are writing, the structure that you want to aim for is you're going to make a claim, you're going to support it with evidence. You start out your paragraph with a general statement. Here is the gist of what I got from all of this evidence that I found. So you make your point, your claim statement. Then the rest of the paragraph, you follow up with the evidence. Where did you find this information? You cite it. And then at the end, you give a so what statement. So you make it really clear to the reader, this claim that I am making is important because blah, blah, blah. I talk to graduate students that say, you know, my professor is smart. I don't want to insult her by being really explicit. Like, she'll understand what I'm getting at here. No, I mean, yes, your professor is extremely smart and she will understand what you're getting at. But the point of this academic writing is to be as clear as humanly possible so there can be no possible misunderstanding. And also, it's a favor to your reader. You guys are reading, you know, 30, 40 articles to write this paper, right? Don't you enjoy it when somebody is very clear and explicit? Isn't it a favor to you when somebody just comes right out and explains why something is important? Don't neglect that so what statement. With each one of your subconcepts, you make your point, you explain what the evidence is, you cite the evidence, and then you tell your reader, here's why it's important. And then you move on to your next paragraph. In writing, of course, you want to avoid plagiarism. And this is especially dicey with these literature reviews where all you're doing is pulling in information from other people's sources. So you want to be extremely careful to make sure that you don't accidentally misrepresent that somebody else's work is something that you came up with. That can happen either on purpose, you guys would never do that, but it can also happen by accident. Plagiarism can happen if you add in information. You can accidentally plagiarize by leaving out key information. In order to do correct citations, the APA manual, I hope you have a copy. If you don't, the library has a copy. I will send you some other resources that are helpful to you. APA style and any citation style it lives in the nitpicky details. Those nitpicky details really do matter. The general gist of how to cite is, first you identify what kind of source am I using? Is this a web page? Is this a journal article? Is this a book? Is this a blog post? Then you go to the APA manual. You find the section that describes how to cite that kind of source, and then you format your citation or your reference entry. There are a lot of helpful sources for this. If you have the APA manual, students love the table that's on page 177. It really lays out, you know, when to use the et als and things like that. In that LibGuide that I mentioned earlier, there's an APA tab that is chock full of good stuff. This APA and Microsoft Word video is so clutch. One of my coworkers went through and just showed you in Microsoft Word where to click to make the hanging indents happen and make the running headers and everything that you need to know. It'll save you a lot of time. If you are interested in using Zotero, which is this like free software that helps you manage all your resources, Zotero will also do your APA style citations for you, so that's a workaround. And then finally, y'all have an assignment upcoming to work through this self-paced APA tutorial. The software is called LibWizard, so the APA LibWizard tutorial, upcoming assignment, it'll be graded, and that is supposed to walk you through the major elements of APA style. So hopefully after you do that tutorial, you'll understand APA style better. That is everything that I have. Hopefully by this point, you understand all the steps that you need to attack your literature review. If you get confused by anything, if you are stuck on searching, just contact me. That's why I am around. Again, my name is Emily Thornton. Here's my email address, ethornton@brenau.edu. My phone number. If you live in the Atlanta or Gainesville area, I'm on both of those campuses, so we can meet in person at Norcross or Gainesville. Zoom appointments are also really popular. If you go to libcal.brenau.edu, you can actually look at my calendar live and see when I'm available to meet with you. You can make an appointment without having to do all the back and forth of trying to find when we're both available. And then for quick answers, this is especially good for APA questions. You can go to libanswers.brenau.edu and you start typing in your question and you will see what we've told other students with similar problems. So a lot of times that'll solve your issue right away. If the answer that you need is not in LibAnswers, you can just send in a new LibAnswers request And that'll come to the Brunel librarians, and very likely it'll be me who gets that question. Start with lib answers, see if your question's already been answered, and then move on to actually asking your question. All right, thank you guys so much. Good luck with the literature review. Do not feel shy to contact me ever. I love hearing from y'all. Thanks. Bye.